It's no secret the media landscape has been changing rapidly for decades. And it's something that's constantly evolving. Pretty much every industry has really had to work to keep up. The same is especially true for journalism. Reporters have to focus on meeting their deadlines, word counts, and of course, reporting the facts. Now, with the internet, journalists have to factor in a lot more. In order to be a successful news outlet, you have to think about your web presence. And to be successful online, you have to know how to appeal to news aggregators. Let's take a moment to explain the difference between news outlets and news aggregators. Here's a quick breakdown. News outlets produce their own content. Think the New York Times, Washington Post, and even your local newspaper. News aggregators, on the other hand, are sites that pull news stories from all sorts of different outlets, like Google News, Apple News, or another app you might scroll through on your phone. For example, when you're on the New York Times website or open their newspaper, you're only getting stories from their reporters. When you're scrolling through the Google News feed, you might see stories from the New York Times, but also BuzzFeed and Fox News, all right next to each other. And sort of like how a newspaper is laid out, news aggregators often section off different stories into categories, such as top news, celebrity gossip, and sports. It's important to stress here that news aggregating sites don't create their own content. In fact, even though they're sharing news, there isn't any real newsroom behind the operations. There might be some editors and programmers, but no working journalists. Whereas news outlets have a team of journalists conducting their own investigations and following original leads. In very basic terms, news outlets make and supply the content, and aggregators help connect the audience to it. The relationship isn't perfect. There are some questions about news aggregating sites making money off of advertisements with content that's not theirs. Not to mention, there's no guarantee people will click into your article to read the full story instead of just glancing through the headlines. Still, this method of news consumption is one that outlets can't afford to ignore. So, now that we know the differences, let's talk about how you can use news aggregating sites responsibly. I'd recommend compiling a list of outlets you trust and go directly to the source. What the Houston Chronicle considers a story worthy of being on the top of their homepage or above the fold in newspaper speak might not even make it on a news aggregation site. But since most people do rely on these sites for information, it's important to note that the algorithms they're relying on mostly focus on news that's trending. That might not be the news that's important to you. If I'm here in Texas and my news feed is filled with stories about a court case in Nebraska, that may not be relevant to me. The main point is, news aggregating sites are created to pull in content that'll get clicks regardless of the quality. Be on the lookout for stories that are actually advertisements. This is how these sites make their money. Because of the financial challenges media outlets have faced in recent years, this practice has drifted into some news outlets' business models as well. That content should be identified explicitly as an ad, but it can be easy to miss in a sea of stories. My last bite of advice is that if and when you see these websites and apps, set some filters and help the algorithm get to know you and your interest. That way, you can get pertinent information from a variety of sources. From there, it's up to you to decide if the news outlet you're directed to is one you can trust. Hey guys, Sarah Self-Walbrick here. If you liked this episode of Media Bytes and want more lessons on media literacy in a media-heavy world, tap on over to our channel to see all past episodes. Be sure to follow us at TTU Public Media for the latest bites that'll help you become more news savvy. Your algorithm will thank you.